Good afternoon, members, officers and any members of the public in the public gallery or viewing on the live stream. Welcome to this meeting of the Scrutiny and Overview Committee. My name is Councillor Graham Cohn and I'm chairing this meeting. My Vice Chair is sitting to my right. I will introduce other attendees when I invite them to speak. Committee members may remind you that you should have before you the main agenda. Those in the chamber are reminded that this meeting is being live streamed. The normal procedure at Scrutiny and Overview Committee meetings is to review and make recommendations to Cabinet by affirmation. And only those members of the committee present in the chamber will be able to move and second motions or affirm. However, members present virtually may speak in the debate. May I ask those who are joining us remotely to ensure that their camera and their microphone remain off unless they are addressing the committee. For those of us present in the room, please ensure that your microphone is close to you and speak clearly when addressing the room. Finally, a report of this meeting will be presented to Cabinet at its next meeting on the 24th of March 26. I don't think myself or the chair will be able to attend that meeting. Are you able to do that, Councillor Bradnam?
I will, Chair.
Thank you for doing that. Okay, so we'll now come on to the main agenda. So do we have any apologies for absence?
Yes, Chair, we have apologies for absence from Councillors Sally Ann Hart, Paul Bearpark, who is substituted by Councillor Dr. Lisa Redrup. And we also received apologies from Councillors Dr. James Hobro and Councillor Peter Fain, but they're attending online.
Thank you for that. So we'll move on to declarations of interest. Does any members have anything they want to declare before the meeting starts? Okay, if anything becomes apparent during the meeting, please let us know. I think we've got Councillor Hobro is indicating to speak online, I think.
Hello, Chair. So I need to mention that through this council, I'm a non-exec director of Ermine Street Housing, so I will remove myself from the meeting before that item is discussed. Thank you.
Thank you for that, Councillor Hobro. We'll note that. Anybody else on declarations of interest? Can't see anyone indicating to speak, so we will move on to agenda item 4, minutes of the previous meeting. So pages 5 to 16. That's the 2 meetings minutes there. Has anybody got anything they'd like to raise? Councillor Lehman.
Thank you, Chair. When I read through the minutes of the extraordinary meeting with Peter Freeman and the Cambridge Growth Company, I just wondered whether it was worth adding a line in, because there was quite a bit of discussion about the Cambridge Growth Company being more conscious of South Cambridgeshire as an area, and I didn't see that reflected in those minutes. When we spoke to Mr. Freeman, he did say that he would like to rectify that and come and visit various parts of our area, so I think it would be quite good to have that as a record.
Thank you for that, Councillor Lehman. Are you happy with that, Councillor Drew?
Indeed, so.
Thank you. Okay, any other things on the minutes at all? Okay, so we'll move on to the next agenda item, which is public questions. Do we have any public questions at all? So no public questions have been submitted. So we'll move on to agenda item 6, which is the Q3 performance report. That's pages 17 to 94. Who would like to start on this item?
I'm happy to start if no one else.
Councillor Stobart.
Chair, thank you. So I just have a few, if you will, minor points. Do you mind if I go through? There are 4 of them. And stop me if you think.
We'll take them one at a time, but please.
Okay. Yeah. If I could just refer to page 24, key performance indicator 6. this was nicely redrawn, the graphic, in response to a question that we raised or a challenge to the clarity of the presentation. But I wonder if it might be done better, because what we're trying to do is to identify deviation from what I call a linear trend, which is regular payments of council tax. And we're looking for some kind of deviation from that. So the way I would see it is that we look at the difference really between the linear expectation and what we actually get. So what I'd be prepared to do is to just draft that idea out for the officer concerned and see what they think, if the committee thinks that's a reasonable way to proceed.
Okay. Did you want comment on that, or did you want to sort of proceed with the draft to officers? Yeah.
I think probably best if I talk to officers
Okay.
first.
Yeah.
And
No,
then
that's
perhaps it'll come
reasonable.
back.
Yeah.
Chair,
Councillor Bradnam.
with all due respect to Councillor Stobart, does not the number in the table next door to it identify the thing that you're trying to pin down? In other words, this.
Yeah. Councillor Stone.
Sorry, I'm still logged on there. Yes and no. Yes, it does identify the difference. It doesn't identify, or it doesn't give us that picture of year-to-year change or a trend. It is I mean, you can scan your eye down that list, but we're looking for a difference between what we're doing and what we ideally would do, which is quite hard to get from a column of numbers.
Okay. Yeah. So I think the proposal is that you make that suggestion to officers and work with them on that outside of the meeting. Yeah.
And yeah, we can always reject it, if it doesn't.
Yeah.
if it
Yeah.
doesn't
Agreed.
right.
Okay. Your next point.
Can I? This is going forward quite a long way to page 40 and strategic indicator 5.
Page 40.
So this is the pipeline of housing. So page 40. So there's the graph at the top, which, on the face of it is very welcome. The pipeline is increasing. But my question turns, where is this going? Because at some point it will reach a steady state where the number of houses, in a sense, being ordered and the number of houses being delivered roughly balances. What should that steady state be? And is this initial set of three numbers over the first 3 quarters, last year, yes, of the municipal year, is this according to target? So where are we headed? And what's the target? What would be good for this graph if we were looking over, say, a 2-year period? So some way into the future.
Yeah, the sort of trajectory. Let's take that one first then. John Batchelor, Councillor John Batchelor, do you want to?
Yes, thanks very much. I mean, we're coming from quite a low base. So, I mean, the object up to now has been to increase the numbers as far as we possibly can, really. And it's now going exponentially up in that, I mean, showing 439 forward here. The actual number at the moment is well over 600 forward. We are essentially doing what we can afford to do. There's a formula for deciding if anything is financially viable, and as long as it's financially viable, we'll do it. So, more the merrier at the moment. Of course, with all this things and everything, no doubt, that we're going to discuss this evening, the elephant in the room, of course, is reorganisation, and there's an awful lot of unknowns about where we're going, 3-5 years forward.
Councillor Stover.
So if you will, Chair, a follow-up.
Yeah.
But each of, as it were, each package that's in the pipeline is demanding a certain amount of management time to make it happen. There would be a limit, perhaps around the staff, although you might recruit to increase that kind of management cover for this. So that would be my one comment on that. So the sky's the limit, really. You know, we're taking every opportunity we can, but on the other hand, there are resource implications.
Thank you. I think that's noted. Yeah. Yeah. Councillor Stobart, your next point.
Page 41, so just the next page. I think we had a debate, didn't we, about what, page 41, affordable. I'm just trying to find the reference to affordable.
SI5C.
Yeah, okay. I've got a page reference there.
It's page 41.
Oh, there we are. Page 41, the strategic indicator 5C. We were interested in a definition of affordable. Where do we draw that definition from? It's widely used, but we need to be more specific.
Yeah, so sort of define the term is what you mean within the paperwork. Councillor Batchelor?
Well, there is a definition. It is affordable is the government's definition is 80% of the market rate. We have our own policy here, which is that we don't charge more than 70% of the market rate. That equates to something around £190 a week.
Okay, so was it wanting that explained in the paperwork, Councillor Stobart?
Yes,
or
it
is
would be useful as a footnote for readers of this document,
Okay.
or this document, and
Yeah, I
any.
think that's
similar.
noted. Yeah, yeah, lovely. Do you have another point? Yeah.
Yeah. Sorry, my
That's all right.
my final point on this item is strategic indicator 11, which is under waste.
What's the page number then?
Yeah. So let me just phrase the question.
Which page number?
47.
Lovely. 47.
So this is the total waste collected per household. Now, my question concerns the variance between, if you will, the maybe the top decile or the top quartile of those numbers and the bottom quartile. And is there advantage in viewing that variance and then using it to either campaign for improvements to the way people manage their waste, or does it have operational implications if there is a big distinction, big difference between the amount of waste that people, individual households are generating?
Have we got Boday's online? Okay, Boday.
Yes, thanks, Chair. I think we'll have a look at that more closely. I can't really say at the moment, but I think perhaps the more useful indicator might be residual waste, because total waste really varies based on garden waste collected. But residual is more of a direct measurement of how well we're doing in terms of reducing black bin waste. But I think we'll pick that up with Councillor Stobart directly, if that's okay.
Yeah. Councillor Stobart, are you happy with that?
I am, yes, Chair.
Lovely.
Thank you.
Good. Okay. Did you have any further points, Councillor Stobart? Okay, I'll move on. So, Councillor Drew.
Thank you.
Thank you. I'm looking at it as an appendix, so I'm looking at the Q3 KPI report, so Appendix A, and KPI 01, so that should hopefully make it simple to find, because I'm looking at the very first one. I don't know, because I am looking at it on the Appendix A, B, C, and D, rather than in the complete report. So basically, if you find the operational key performance indicator report, as I am right at the start, thank you very much. Okay. So, KPI 01 and KPI 02 obviously are linked together in that the first one relates to the average number of days to process new housing benefit or council tax support scheme claims, and then 02 is the average number of days to process housing benefit or council tax scheme change events. The trend for KPI 1 about the number of days to process new claims is clearly heading upwards. So there is a downward trend clearly 2022 into 2023. We have a sort of slightly, so we say, outlying move in the first half of 2023. It then remains generally fairly static 2024 to the middle of 25, but there is clearly then a progression upwards in the number of days from approximately the middle of 2024 through to the current day. So even as a trend line, we seem to be going from about 10 days to somewhere more in the region of about 15 days. But at the same time, the average number of days to process change events is pretty much static. If anything, it probably is slightly down as a trend line. So I'm just wondering why we think that the number of days to process new claims seems to be climbing, while the number of days to process change events seems, relatively speaking, unchanged.
Councillor Williams, did you want me to come to you in the first instance? Yeah?
That's Dawn.
Dawn, yeah?
Okay, looking at the change events, we introduced automation with regard to change events. So a lot of the change events are actually processed without human intervention. So that reduces the number. We're then left with lower amount but more difficult change events to actually process. We've also introduced generic working within the team. So we are at or around target for new claims, but we're using staff within the team to do council tax as well as benefits. So it's a bit of a sharing the resources between the teams.
Okay. The number of people in the team has not reduced. Is that correct?
We have had a reduction in staff as part of a transformation project.
Okay, so because the first bit of what you're saying there about the use of automation, use of AI for the change events rather than the new events, obviously makes perfect sense. I assume that change events generally are more simple to deal with.
We're processing universal credit, a lot of the universal credit changes for council tax support using the automation.
So the change events generally are more simple to deal with. I will do that as a sort of a rather simplistic interpretation. They're more simple to deal with. Okay, so one of the benefits clearly of the use of AI, use of automation technology, administration that can be done automatically. But if we are moving some of the administration away from people and we are putting it into the automation, surely one of the benefits of that would be to free up time so that the human beings who are going to deal with more complicated tasks are therefore freed up to deal with the more complicated tasks. If we accept that is the case, then I go back to my question regarding why there has been an increase in the number of days that the council takes to process new claims. Because as we can see, going back to what I said, if we go to the middle of 2024, the mean number of days, the rolling average seems to be somewhere in the region of about 10 or so, yet currently on the trend line, the rolling average is getting close to 15 and is getting close to what the target is. So therefore, there has been an increase of around 5 days on average for the council to process new housing benefit and council tax support scheme claims. I just ask why we think that there has been an increase of around 50% in the time it takes to process new housing benefit and council tax support claims.
With the housing benefit claims, we are no longer processing the more simple claims. So we're now processing supported housing claims and those with temporary accommodation, which traditionally do take longer to process because housing costs for most of our working age claims will be under the UC payment. We have had an increase in localised council tax support claims, and we're looking to make that more simple as part of the changes to localised council tax support, which are coming in April. So trying to actually make that process simpler and quicker.
Okay, so this is how I'm interpreting what you're saying again. Correct me if I'm wrong. In terms, therefore, of the housing benefit claims, what you're actually saying then is that the housing benefit claims new within the data set from 2022 to 2024 contain a lot more simple housing benefit claim applications. And effectively, therefore, the data on the average number of days to process this for the period up to, say, the middle of 24, when the easy ones are stripped out, means that actually, although the average number of days is going up, it's actually taking longer to process, not because the staff are not working as well or as efficiently, but they are no longer able effectively to drive down their average time by doing some simple ones and then doing a complicated one. So actually, this line, it's not my original idea of comparing where we were is actually false, because the first half is actually not comparing the same thing as the second half is, because the second half is more complicated.
We're on the last stages of UC migration. So, which means that those working age claims who used to be with us and being processed by us will fall off by the end of March. So, and that's been happening over a period of time. So your assumption is correct.
Okay, great, thank you. If I could move to, and I apologise once again, I will rely on one of my colleagues to point out what page we are on. I am now moving to Appendix B, and I am looking at Appendix B, Strategic Indicator Report, the cumulative number of trees delivered through the 6 free trees scheme. I'm sure everyone else can say that. Page 49, thank you. It seems to be the case that in the first year of this 2020-21, that, as you can see, 264 trees were given out. Since then, it seems to have been somewhere between about 130 and 150 or so trees given out per year. And actually, although there is a slight fluctuation, it doesn't change dramatically. I was just wondering why we think that the number of trees being able to be given out started at 264, but now seems to have settled around 130. Do we have any reasons why we think that uptake of the 6 free trees scheme is perhaps stuck at around 130, when in the first year it was around double that? Well, that's fine, but I will ask the officers or the cabinet members to tell me.
Councillor John Williams.
Thank you, Chair. Well, the answer is that parish councils are running out of places to put these trees. That's why we amended the scheme. We've amended the scheme going forward so that they can take into account landowners that, like schools, for example, that use land for public purposes to enable them to have these trees. But yes, so we obviously in the early days, it was the low-hanging fruit. The parishes had the land, but obviously once they've got the tree, it's the law of diminishing returns. They're having trouble finding more land for more trees. But I say we have attempted to broaden the scheme so that we can have more trees in more places.
Excellent, thank you. So that's a really good example, I would say, of where a really successful scheme has been launched. It has worked through in the process that was there, and then the council has responded perhaps to statements from parish councils of saying we don't have any more land by broadening and editing the scheme. I look forward to the next 1,000 trees being planted. Marvellous. Thank you very much. Thank you to Councillor Kane.
Thank you. Councillor Tom Bygott.
Yeah, so I've got a few questions. On page 25, in Appendix A, there's a graph of major planning applications determined within time frame. And in the accompanying text, it's about 3 to 4 lines from the bottom on the right. It says these objections have been, sorry, go back one. There are ongoing objections from Anglian Water related to foul drainage capacity and wastewater treatment works, and that these objections have impacted on some applications. So my first question is, how many planning applications are currently delayed due to water infrastructure constraints?
Okay. Okay, yeah, I think Stephen Kelly's online. Stephen?
Thank you for the question. I can't answer that question right now because I would need to just make sure I checked the number of holding objections that we've got from Anglian Water. So I wouldn't want to misadvise the committee, but we can certainly come back to you on that. It's a number of applications that mean that we're having to extend the time period whilst we work through that issue with Anglian Water and the developers. But I'd have to give you a number subsequent to this through the minutes.
Thank you for that. I think that sounds reasonable.
Yeah, that would be fine. Yeah, look forward to that. So my second question is on page 31. So there are 2 graphs on that page. The top one, percentage of fly tips cleared within 10 working days. So in the text on the right-hand side, it says at the top that 334 removal requests were done within 10 working days. And then in the third paragraph, 13 fixed penalty notices issued for fly tipping. So my question is, if there were 336 cases, why could we only issue 13 fixed penalty notices? Are we unable to find the culprits in the majority of those cases?
Okay. Bode?
Yes, that's the answer. Unable to find the culprits and actually track them down. Exactly that, yes. But again, I'll mention that we're able to issue a lot more FPAs than we did before because we have more enforcement officers. So either to 2 years ago, we're not issuing as many, but to issue 13 in a quarter is quite a lot. So yeah, for the rest, we're not able to track down the offenders.
Okay, would that be a case for having an additional officer to help with fly tipping and environment waste as per our alternative budget suggestion?
It's a combination of things.
Required.
It's not just the staff, it's a combination of things that apart from the staff, there's the vehicle resourcing as well, and also just being able to actually track down the offenders. So even if we had more, we wouldn't always be able to track them down because of the nature of fly tipping. But I must say that we're looking at alternative ways using technology to be able to track down offenders.
Understanding is a lot of fly tips is that people put their personal rubbish in there, which includes letters addressed to them, and then many fly tippers are actually caught for that exact reason. Yeah. So that's just an aside. And then my last question is actually the graph just immediately below that about bins collected on schedule. So that is actually really good results to see, all in green, 99.91%. So my question is more of a qualitative one, and that is where we do miss bins, do we keep a record of which streets they were in, and is there a process where for example, some streets may be more likely to be missed, do we go back and try to work out how we could do those streets better? And lastly, in relation to the number of missed bins, how do we compare with other similar authorities?
Bode?
Thank you, Chair. Yes, we do keep a record. And I think we plan to perhaps modify this measure in the coming months, because the missed bins also includes bins that are missed due to no fault of ours. It could be that the road is closed. There's some roadworks going on there. So there are a few factors that contribute to missed bins. But we do investigate. And if it's something that's due to our fault, perhaps it's a new driver or a new loader who didn't know where the street was, then we make a note of that and improve on that. In terms of how we compare to others, I don't have that data to hand, but we can share that with the committee afterwards.
Thank you for
Yeah,
that.
that would be fine. Thank you very much.
Lovely. Okay, so I have got Councillor Richard Williams, please.
Thank you, Chair. A few questions. One actually picks up on something Councillor Bygott just mentioned, and that's with planning. So page 25 again, I think of the bundle. Same KPI 08. I've asked this many times over many years, but I'm going to ask it again. The KPIs always say major applications determined within 13 weeks or agreed timeline. And in a sense, I'm not casting any aspersions here because I don't know, because we don't have the figures, but in a sense, they're slightly meaningless statistics because we don't know how many go over 13 weeks as part of an agreed timeline. So I think it's unlikely that timelines wouldn't be agreed if there was a delay over 13 weeks, so it's very likely. But without knowing how many extensions there are, we can't really properly judge the performance. So I've asked many times before, but I'll ask again if we could get a clear indication within these KPIs of how many applications are being extended. I've got a couple of other questions. Shall I go on to them or do you want me to
Let's
stop
take
there?
that one first. Stephen Kelly is online.
So thank you. The reason for using that metric is because it is the national standard metric that is deployed by the government in determining whether planning authorities are failing or not, and is also the metric that drives intervention. It is actually possible to publish the number of applications that have an extension of time. In fact, the government's live tables include that very data. But we have chosen to use this indicator because it is the one that represents both the intervention level from government and is the driver of that intervention process. So I think it would probably be appropriate to introduce an additional measure for the quarterly performance report, but it wouldn't be. This is the correct indicator as far as we can determine for the comparative national performance. But I can help assist Councillor Williams in finding actually where the data is published every quarter by the government that allows comparison with with all of our neighbouring authorities. It's fair to say, depending upon the size of the application, and we've referenced obviously challenges with Anglian Water and others, larger applications almost universally across the country will have an extension of time in some way, shape or form. But I can, if it's helpful, I can provide a note in the minute. I do recall coming to Scrutiny Committee a couple of years ago with a more detailed report on this particular matter.
Yeah, thank you. So I think I was on Scrutiny at that point, and it was actually really useful when we got that more detailed report, except that this is a standard measure, but I just think it would be useful for the committee if somewhere we could have that extra detail. If it's publicly published anyway, then rather than diving through the live tables, which are not the easiest and most user-friendly things,
if there could be a space found somewhere to put that information for the committee, as I say, if it's public anyway, I can't see.
Yeah. I'll go to cabinet members. Is that noted?
Yeah, it's noted. I mean, obviously we'll talk to Stephen about this. We
Yeah,
don't want
thank
to
you.
burden our officers with too much work if that information is available elsewhere, but we'll discuss it with Stephen and see if it's possible to include it in these documents.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Chair.
Councillor Richard Williams.
Thank you, Chair. A couple of other points. One on page 32, just about recycling. So obviously, as I'm sure committee members have seen, you know, that's one of the KPIs that's red and amber. But there's a very, very consistent and quite, you know, long-term decline, really, dating back nearly 2 years in the percentage of waste recycled. So obviously I've read the explanation in the comments, but it didn't quite explain to me why there is a long-term consistent decline in recycling. And quite what we could do about it. I mean, it says, I know there are campaigns, etc., but I'm not sure. They don't seem to have made any difference. And obviously, you know, recycling used to be much higher. So it's not that there's, you know, we didn't have food waste collection, that explains it. That doesn't explain it because it used to be much higher than it is now. So I was wondering if we could get a bit more explanation as to the reason for the long-term sustained decline.
Councillor John Williams, did you want to come in on that, or anyone else?
I remember us discussing this, I think, when we looked at the Q1 results last year, and I think we decided that because of the very dry weather, the actual tonnage of green waste has gone down because fewer people are cutting their grass because the grass isn't growing as much. And, you know, and you can see this on the table on page 47 under the long-term trend of residual back bin waste per household, that we've seen, you know, a residual fall in waste across the board. But as I say, with regard to organic waste and waste that's recycled, blue waste has stayed reasonably constant. We've seen black and green waste fall, and that's mainly due to the climate change and changing weather, which is producing less organic material.
Thank you for that. Councillor Richard Williams.
I'm a little bit sceptical of that, I will be honest, but I will leave it there. I think the point's been made. I'm not sure we can entirely blame climate change. I have some
If I could add to that, sorry to jump in, Chair. If I could just add to that through you, Chair.
Yeah.
We actually gave a much more detailed explanation about 9 months ago. Part of the contributory factor, nature to what Councillor John Williams said, is the fact that the actual weight of packaging has gone down. So if you look at your typical bottle, your cereal packet, because we now have a lot of punitive measures on producers, they have to use a lot more recycled content. The thickness and the weight of packaging has gone down because of EPR, extended producer responsibility. They now actually pay for the recycling of packaging. So the volume of collection is the same, but the actual weight of packaging has gone down. That's one of the main contributory factors. And we can resubmit that. We gave that detail. It's nationwide. We can resubmit that explanation that we gave some months ago.
Yeah, thank you. That's really useful. Actually, it's really. I mean, I wasn't on the committee at that point, so apologies for making you repeat. But I wasn't on scrutiny. I don't think at that point. But I mean, I think in that case, would it be long-term point? But is it worth revisiting these targets then? Because if there is a long-term sustained reduction in the weight of waste, that sounds like a case to relook at our targets, so they don't keep coming out.
I'll come to the cabinet member. Bode, hang on. I'll come to the cabinet member first. Are you happy to take that on board and look at the figures?
Well, I think Bode will say that as a result of the introduction of food waste, we're going to be doing something like this anyway. We're going to be looking and reviewing the waste that we're collecting, and you know how much of that waste is recycled now that food waste is going to be taken out of the recycle of the green organic bin. So I think what you're asking for is going to be happening anyway.
So the targets would be reviewed essentially, Councillor Williams. Yeah. Councillor Richard Williams.
Very, very good news. And then just final point, so moving on now, on to page 41, this is away from the KPIs, looking at strategic indicators. So obviously we've got percentage of completions that are affordable, which is fine. I've sort of made the point before, though, that if we're setting as a council a strategic target or indicator of having affordable homes, that does mean slightly more than just affordable home completions, because of course that doesn't actually tell you about the rents that are being charged. It doesn't tell you about the cost of buying a house. So again, it's a point I've made before, but and I mean, I think there has been a bit more information coming forward on this, which is good. But I just think if we really are going to set a target of affordable housing that's affordable, it needs to be more than just the number of affordable homes completed. We need to have data on the rent that's being charged on those homes comparative to market rents, the cost of buying a newly completed home in South Cambridgeshire, which is what affordability means to most people. It doesn't mean a technical definition of what counts as an affordable home under the NPPF. It means how much does it cost? And I think we could have more information on that.
Councillor John Batchelor, I think the similar point was made by Councillor Stobart, but yeah.
Yes, so I mean, I stick with that explanation, but Peter hasn't done anything yet. It's about time he answered the question, I think. Peter Campbell is the one.
I'll make a very valuable contribution. Stephen, do you want to come on this one? It's a Stephen.
I'm happy for you to comment, but in fact, I was just searching because there are a number of different measures. Obviously, this is a planning service indicator, which is why we use the National Policy Framework definition of affordable housing. I think we could provide potentially some broader narrative. I note that, in fact, the recent Centre for Cities report highlights how the earnings to cost ratio of housing in Cambridgeshire, unlike in Oxford, has in fact fallen recently from 14 times to 10 times. That's not necessarily making all housing more affordable, but it is indicative that the policies in some respects are having a positive pressure against price inflation in Cambridgeshire. And we could certainly add that type of data to some of the analysis, and that Peter Campbell may well also wish to expand upon.
Councillor Richard Williams.
Thank you, that's really useful. Just to say, yeah, I mean, again, going back to the live tables, I mean, the data on particularly new build relative affordability is also in the live tables. And I think that would be quite a useful thing to factor into this. Again, given it already exists in the live tables, it would be useful to bring it to the council. But I've had enough time, so thank you.
Thank you. So we've got Councillor Helen Leeming.
Thank you, Chair. I'm going to start with a housing thing, seeing as we're in that section of the report at the moment. So I'm going to look at the strategic indicator 5CI, which is on page 40. That's stating that 1,735 housing completions took place in South Cambs in the 24-25 financial year, which is the highest number over the previous 5-year period, which I think is something that you know, living in this very expensive area, we should be pleased about. But my question was, does the Cabinet or officers see any risks to this progress continuing? You know, do we think we will be able to keep up this high number of new housing completions, and what are the things that may hamper that?
Councillor John Batchelor.
Yes, thank you. As I said earlier, we currently have about 600 houses in the forward plan, which we've already contracted for. I should perhaps explain how we get housing, in that we don't build any housing because we don't build any housing because we don't actually own land. So we have to buy the housing out of 106 obligations that major developers have. So we are in a competitive market where we have to bid for the affordable housing elements of various developments. We're currently successful in about 25% of all the houses that are actually built. We are now actually buying as against others. So that's one side of it. And what was the other question? Sorry.
Thank you. I thought that this was housing completions in our area of all sorts, not only not only the ones that are within our control.
Yeah, I can see. Yeah.
This is council homes, isn't it?
No, this is
Which
all
one we're looking
housing.
at now? This is S15CI. Yeah, that's everything.
That's everything.
Yeah.
So I think the point that you made and the social housing that's being built is part of this picture, but it's not the entirety. My question was, do we see that this rate of house building will continue, and what are the challenges to it continuing in this form?
Councillor Batcher.
Yes, well, given the growth forecast for Cambridgeshire, it will accelerate because there's still going to be a requirement for social housing and all the developments that are coming forward. So the number can only increase. The numbers that apply specifically to the council will vary because, as I say, this is a competitive market where we actually have to bid in to purchase the housing. And some of the bigger affordable landlords are in much stronger financial positions than we are necessarily, with 10, 20,000 houses on their books. But there's no reason to suppose that it won't continue. But it comes back to my earlier comment that there's a lot of unknowns coming up in the next couple of years with reorganisation and how we're going to stand with finances and so on, which we're very strong on at the moment, is an open question. But as things stand at the moment, it all looks good.
Thank you for that. Stephen Kelly, did you want to add anything to that? Indicate to speak.
Thank you. Yeah, I mean, I suspect, Councillor Batchelor is right that there is very clear ambitions here to, as you will have seen in the local media, to grow the housing delivery rates in Greater Cambridge as a whole, and the government's consultation is live on a means to do that via a development corporation. I think it is fair to say that the headwinds, the economic headwinds that the country is facing, and particularly the downward pressure on demand that's exerting across the country, Greater Cambridge is not immune to that pressure. We're in the position of being probably well placed, both from an economic perspective, but also from the work of the planning committees over the last few years, as we often say, has created a position where there's consent for many thousands of houses ready to go. We are contingent, however, and dependent upon the market demand for that, and that has experienced greater pressure in greater levels of challenge over the last couple of years. So we're optimistic that we will be able to maintain and sustain growing housing completions, but we are, in a sense, the council is dependent upon the economy and wider macroeconomic factors to underpin that.
move planning applications which have been granted forward that haven't actually been picked up and built out yet?
Councillor Batchelor.
I think Stephen's probably better placed.
Okay, Stephen Kelly.
Thank you. It is a reflection that there is a very healthy pipeline of consents. And over the last couple of years, we've been working really hard with the development industry to make sure that, for example, the time between granting an outline planning permission and seeing spades in the ground, and therefore the cost and the impact of that is reduced. We focused really hard on working very closely with partners to tweak and refine some of those planning permissions. I'm conscious that, for example, the work most recently with the owners of Bourne Airfield to get that scheme up and running has been very successful in terms of shortening the normal, very considerable time preparing design codes and so forth. We've designed new ways of trying to facilitate early implementation for precisely those reasons. But we are facing some challenges working with partners and government on things like water availability, which will start to potentially have an impact on the rate at which we can see houses coming forward. The Environment Agency and others, insofar as we can, are being brought into that discussion to try and help overcome them.
Thank you for that. Councillor Lehman.
Thank you, Stephen. That's very helpful. I'm going to move on to another question now. So on page 36, still in Appendix B, Strategic Indicator 1BI, the DFG grant spend, a number of grants approved. I'm looking at the value of the grants that have been sort of spent and awarded in the 2 years. And I'm wondering whether this is sort of skewed by an average cost of a project. You know, if there were a number of we could have had 10 fairly cheap schemes and one very expensive scheme at a particular point. And I was just wondering whether we were genuinely seeing a sort of drop in the numbers of applications, or whether or whether it was to do with whether it was to do with a lack of uptake in this. My question is partly to do with the motion that I raised about a year ago now, which is that sometimes the work that is required to be done is too expensive to be covered fully by the DFG grant, and so there may be someone who wishes to have this work done, but the scheme in its entirety is too expensive.
Councillor Henry Batchelor.
Me?
Yeah.
Sorry, I was miles away then, apologies.
Yeah.
I think it's actually...
Yeah, I think it's housing.
Okay, well, it's under health supported communities, but yeah. Either way, I'm happy for either bachelor to answer.
Well, sorry, I was actually miles away, so I missed the question. So, okay. I don't know, we're throwing this around, Peter.
Thank you. Yes, you're probably right, as it says in the text. There's going to be further investigation to understand what's happened this year. My understanding is that there's been a change in the way the grants are offered, and there's been an increase in the grants available to an individual. So it's very likely that we're having fewer higher cost adaptations carried out. But what we will do is that once that investigation that's referred to is completed, we'll make sure that the members are updated of the outcome.
Thank you, Peter. That would be really interesting to see the outcome of that investigation. My final question is actually another Peter Campbell question. It's to do with Appendix A, KPI 16, which is the percentage of damp and mould cases dealt with within a statutory timescale. Page 30. Page 30. So my question is, this is a new KPI for us, and I'm glad that we're reporting on this. It looks like we had 2 significant cases in quarter 3. And then we anticipated a drop in performance in this quarter that we're in now. I wondered whether those things have materialised or not, or whether we were being cautious.
Councillor John Batchelor?
I think Peter is probably a better place.
Okay, Peter Campbell?
I don't know, if I'm honest. What you've got to bear in mind, the instance of damp and mould are very closely related to the weather. So you would expect there to be an increase in numbers over the winter months. One of the things that we are doing is we've got a damp and mould team, and we're also employing some additional surveyors who most of the year will be carrying out stock condition surveys, but they'll be flexible. So when we do have an increase in demand over the winter months, they'll be able to be transferred to do the damp and mould. So I think that what we've got planned should help to deal with any upturn in demand.
Councillor Lehman.
Thank you. So that's actually really good to hear, because I sort of looked at this and thought, well, if we think there's going to be more damp and mould cases, what are we doing about it? And I'm actually really relieved to hear that we've got flexible arrangements to ensure that we have staff to tackle it. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Councillor Lisa Redrup.
Thank you, Chair. My question is on Appendix D, the tenant satisfaction measures, which is on page 91. And in particular, it's CH02, the percentage of complaints responded to within complaint handling code timescales period. So I'm just looking at the data, and it's got it for 3 months, October, November and December of 2025. And it just seems to have quite a lot of variability. So it goes from 82% to 100% to 88%. So I was just wondering if there's any sort of explanation for that variability, and if those explanations can be used to try and help improve in the future. Thank you.
Okay. Councillor John Batchelor.
Not sure I understood that. Sorry, could we?
Are you right to repeat, Councillor Redrup?
Yeah, sure. So I'm on page 91, and it's the second one down, CH02. And it's the percentage of complaints responded to within the right timescale. So I think 10 days for stage 1 or 20 days for stage 2. And there's a target of doing 95% within those timescales. And over the 3 months, it starts quite low at 82%, but then it goes all the way up to 100% of complaints being handled within timescales, and then it drops again to 88%. So I was just wondering if there's an explanation for that could be used to help going forwards.
So why there's no control? Yeah, thank you, Chair. Well, there's no control about how many complaints you're going to get, isn't there? So they come in different times of the year. You might get more than others. Somewhere elsewhere, there's the actual numbers involved in all this. You'll find the numbers are quite small, in fact, that where complaints are being taken, second or third stage. We are paying quite a lot of attention to complaint response, because this is something that the new ombudsman, who's the housing ombudsman, is going to inspect us at some point soon, has a particular interest in complaint dealing. So we are aware that we're not 100% in that area, and we are working on it.
Because I think these figures are pretty good, but I suppose what we're saying is, are you saying the amount of applications? Because obviously you have no control about how many sort of complaints or whatever or applications are coming in. We're talking about why is there a variability in the time taken to deal with the complaint? Yeah.
Well, I think that's about the complexity of the complaint. Some might well be straightforward, but very often they're extremely complex matters. I think that's all I want to say about that in open meeting.
Yeah. Is that okay, Councillor Redrup?
Yes, that's fine, thanks. I did see Peter Campbell had his hand up, but
Did you want to add anything?
If it's any help, I mean, what we've had is an increase in the complexity of complaints. So I got one yesterday as an appeal, which, as well as the complaint, contained 26 extra pages of text. And what we are finding is that some of the some complaints that we're getting are complicated and have been written with the use of AI. And people, that's unfortunately helps raise people's expectations of outcome because they've misunderstood the questions. So they need a lot more undoing. Well, that's my own little moan aside. What's not clear in this, and we can put the numbers in future, if that would help the number of cases, like we have done the table above it. But even the ones that are missing, the majority of those have been missed by 1 or 2 days. We recognise that it's important to get the complaint right, and we have got a plan in place to improve that. There's no reason why we can't be achieving 100% in the future.
Okay, sorry, just Chair and I having a conversation. Does the council's policy in relation to these complaints say that if your complaint is really complex and long, the council doesn't guarantee to meet the deadline?
No.
So
but can I? There's more to it than that.
Well, sorry, before you answer,
yeah.
I accept there's more to it, but the public has a right to complain about the services they receive from government. We are government. Unless the policy of the government agency or organisation says, if your complaint is really complicated and really long, we won't meet our stated time frame, then my view would be that as much as what you are saying is no doubt entirely correct, and I totally accept it, the public has a right to expect that the time frame for the complaints will be met. And if we're not going to meet it because the complaint is so complex, then we need to rewrite the policy to say, if your complaint is, I don't know, whatever threshold, then we are unable to say that we will meet the timeline. I think the public has a right to expect that.
Absolutely. So let me give some background to this. So the complaints policies that we have follow the guidance that are set by the Housing Ombudsman and the Local Government Ombudsman. That they set a time scale. We've recently updated our corporate policy to reflect those. Within those policies, we have to, within procedures, we've got to follow certain guidance. So we do write to people on very early in the process to give them a time in which they can expect a response. If we find that complaint is particularly complicated or we're waiting for information, we can ask for an extension, and that's the procedure. And if we're following that, we should be aiming for 100% of complaints be dealt with in that timescale. The point I'm making is that, unfortunately, within the housing service, we failed sometimes to respond within that timescale. We've not always asked for an extension where perhaps we could have done, and that would have been the best outcome. And we accept that that's a failing at this moment in time, or sorry, in how we've behaved. So what we've done now is that we've revisited that. We're changing the way that we deal with complaints in order that sort of failure does not happen again, and the future where we're aiming for 100% compliance, recognising that we have got that freedom to ask for an extension when appropriate.
Thank you. I think that's an entirely reasonable and very clear answer. Thank you.
Councillor Redrup.
Thank you to both Councillor Batchelor and Peter Campbell for coming back and answering that very detailed answer. Thank you.
Thank you for that. Councillor Anna, did you have anything else, Councillor? No. Councillor Anna Bradnam, please.
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to one comment and then one question. Back at the query that was made on page 32 about KPI 20, the percentage of household waste sent for reuse, recycling and composting. And we had a very extensive discussion of this at an earlier Scrutiny and Overview Committee. And Bodo has reminded us that one of the reasons for that could be that it had been a very dry summer and less material sent for composting. Absolutely sensible. But my observation also is that a lot of ordinary residents, firstly, are no longer using single-use plastic shopping bags, and also people are gathering up all their soft plastic waste, which of course is not recyclable under our blue bin system, and they're sending it back to the supermarkets. So I think, although that's probably very light, I think there's an element of less packaging being returned to us for recycling. And I think that is a change in culture going through our communities, because we're making such a song and dance about it. So I'm sure it's light and it may not contribute much to the percentage of the weight, but I do think that is another reason. Because every time I go into my supermarket, which is Tesco's Milton, there are trolleys filled with plastic waste. So that's just my observation about that, and I think there might be a contributor there.
Thank you for that.
Right, my question, on the other hand, is I just observe this Q3 performance report. Obviously, we get it 4 times a year, and thank you very much to the officers who must put an enormous amount of time into gathering it, collating it, making sure it's accurate and putting it together. It's brilliant, but it's 77 pages. And I'm just thinking, firstly, to save our officers an enormous amount of time. Obviously, it's useful and it gives us stuff to interrogate, and that's really important. But we've got 14 pages of the performance report, we've got 15 pages of strategic indicator and 33 pages of the corporate action plan. And I just wondered, given that we're trying to enable our officers to do their jobs efficiently, firstly, do we actually need to see it every quarter? Or, if we do need to see it every quarter, would we be content to do a bit of a pruning exercise to make this report shorter? Maybe there are some things that I'm trying to save our officers' work. And I just don't want us to lose the detail when it's important, but I just wondered, and I think it would be a Kevin Ledger question really, or probably corporate management, but I just wondered whether we could look at this and consider whether it's a reasonable thing to ask for every quarter.
So I'll answer one of the points about I think it probably could come twice a year rather than 4 times a year, but I always bring it if scrutiny members request it to be brung essentially to the committee. So that's why we've had it on the agenda a number of times. In terms of the length of the report, I didn't know if I think Anne Ainsworth was going to comment on it.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, very happy to come in on this. And I think Peter may want to say something on this as well, because that is partly why the report has become lengthier than it was previously. So as you know, in the past, incredibly helpful comments from Scrutiny in the past that have helped to tweak and refine and develop the way that we present these reports. And we heard more of those comments this evening as well, which is always really welcome. Thank you very much. The way that we present it at the moment and the way that this has expanded over time has in part been due to member feedback and the level of interest. And we really, it's fantastic that we have that. So the report at the moment reflects that level of interest. And as you know, we think very hard about things like the narrative that goes into the report, the explanation that sits behind some of the KPIs, and also how some of those graphs are presented as well. And we introduced the strategic indicators to be able to talk a little bit more about how we do things, not just the outcome of it as well. If there's any other comments on how we could potentially continue to refine and develop it, we really, really welcome that. We're very keen to hear that. At the moment, I would say that the report serves multiple purposes. It helps us as a council be able to explain and show to members of the public what we're doing. It obviously reflects the priorities of the council, and we hope that it provides that level of information which Scrutiny and other members have welcomed in the past. I will just come to Peter, because there is a crucial point, I think, about the way that housing has been changing recently as well.
Peter?
Yes, thank you. Some members will remember a few months ago we had a mock inspection of the housing service in preparation for a visit by the housing regulator. One of the things that we learned from that is that the expectation of the regulator is that we provide more information to the governing body, which could be council, and in some cases it could be groups of tenants. And in particular, they were looking at full information on compliance reports, for example. And the feedback of the mock inspection was that we need to improve that. So I'll be very reluctant to commit to reducing the amount of information that we provide to you. And I will warn you in advance that there's a very good chance that we will need to increase to meet those expectations. What we can't do is to cut down and risk getting a poor rating, which will of course affect the reputation of the whole council.
Thank you for that. Councillor Bradnam.
Thank you for that really helpful reply. You know that we dive into these reports and we pull them apart and ask lots of questions, and I'm glad that that is always useful. And I don't want to give any suggestion that I don't want to see it, because I do. But I just, given that we need to be working efficiently, I just wanted to run that. What's the word that people might think of it as being, I can't think of the word, not underhand, but insurgent kind of question. But it's worth asking it once in a while. Are we doing too much? But I'm quite happy that we carry on if we recognise it is serving a good purpose and used for lots of different purposes and gives lots of people lots of information that informs subsequent decisions. So great, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Bradnam. I've just got one question, but I can't remember which page it's on. It's on the EPCs. I think it was 43. So I was just going to ask about the C ratings, because obviously we're going to have to move our stock over to a C rating, the entirety of the stock by 2030, and I think the social element was 28. So I just wanted to check that we're on track to do that, essentially, because the report alludes to the fact there are a number of properties outside of the 65% that we've already achieved that are very close to that anyway. I just sort of wondered, how close are we? Is it just very minor things, or what percentage, if you like, are really close? So, what is that gap that we've, because there are bound to be some properties that are, much harder to get to a C. Councillor Batchelor.
Yeah, thank you, Jeff. Yes, we're very close. I think, as you say, some of them don't require a great deal. I mean, in some cases, changes light bulbs, for example. So I'm not sure, I haven't got the exact numbers in front of me. I don't know if Peter has them in his mind. But,
yeah, we don't have to have them now, actually. If we could get an idea after the meeting of the percentage that are very close that the report indicates, that would be helpful, I think. So we know of the 35% how close we are.
I'm happy to do that. I think it might be more useful for members, though, that if we give ourselves some time and we married up what our shortages were with what our expenditure plans are as well. So you can see the full picture rather than just a partial view.
I think that's reasonable. Yeah. Thank you for that. So I don't think we've got any other speakers on this agenda item, so are members happy that we've asked questions, scrutinised the report and so forth and noted it? Agreed? Lovely. Okay. So we will move on to the next agenda item, which is agenda item 7. This is Northstowe Local Centre and Employment Zone, pages 95 to 104. I'll just remind members that this is the section of the document that we're holding in open session that isn't commercially sensitive. So when you're asking questions around this item, just be mindful of the fact that some of it is commercially sensitive, which is on the pink papers. We will come on to that in closed session at the end of the meeting, but if councillors would like to ask anything in open session on the papers, please do. Councillor Bradnam.
Obviously, this is looking at selling a parcel of land, is it not? Conditional sale of the freehold of the local centre land. And I just wanted to sort of check, you know, we received this land because the developer hadn't delivered the local centre at the timing that we had wished them to. And so we had to take a sort of fairly emergency decision to do that in order to make sure that a local centre would be delivered. And I just wanted to check, and I can do this if you prefer under the pink pages, and I might ask it anyway under the pink pages, but I just wanted to check, you know, to what degree are we divesting ourselves of a development obligation, and are we just, is this the way in which we make it happen, or is this reducing our risk?
Okay. Councillor Batcher.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. So this is one of 3 options we have in front of us to do with the land. We can either, do this, so we can, sell it off with an element of control about what is built on that land. We can either go into a joint venture with a partner and build it out in collaboration with someone, or we can try and build it out ourselves. So yeah, after having sort of done some quite extensive sort of research, and we took on external support to help us look at the pros and cons of those decisions, I think we've sort of come to the conclusion that in the case of delivering something of high quality and in a reasonable amount of time, because expediency is a consideration here. I think the recommendation, the preferred option is to go down this route. So I'm just saying this isn't the only option that is available to us. And yeah, I think it does mention that in the papers as well, that there are other options that Cabinet could take if they decided that this wasn't the right way to go. But certainly the recommendation from officers, which I support, is to go down this route here.
Councillor Bradnam. Yeah. Councillor Stobart.
So if I could just dwell on the option, through you, Chair,
yes,
that we've just talked about, which is the identifying a suitable purchaser of the land and then agreeing a conditional sale. Comes down to the strength of the contractual arrangement and the evaluation of scenarios and risks and all of that, and then kind of trusting in that contractual framework is strong enough to actually get to the result. So I wouldn't say it's down to chance, but really the process that we follow has to be particularly robust. So that would, if I could kind of distill this down to a question, are we sure we can make that process robust enough by including, for example, making sure we've got a good legal support, but but also doing things like a red team evaluations, just making sure everything is covered and that the result is robust. Because I think the backdrop to this, isn't it, that this local centre is really required, like now.
Let's
So
take that.
could you comment on that, making this super robust and delivering for the council through a proper contractual framework?
Yeah, so as you identified, the local centre is a key part of Northstowe for us. I'm sure you're aware we as a council have invested a lot of money into Northstowe so far, because we're invested in this, ultimately a very big new town that will be sitting within South Cambridgeshire. We want that to be a huge success. And the local centre, as you can tell from the title, will be essentially the epicentre of this town. We want it to fall in with our values, our vision for the town. We're listening to the people that live there, and we're trying to deliver what they want. So you're absolutely right. We need to go through a robust process to identify a partner that will actually, that shares that approach and will help us to deliver that. If we do go down this route, a very robust process will be taken, and I won't go into detail, but you will see in the exempt papers we do have some information on some soft market testing that we've done already. I will sort of pass over to officers as well, because they can probably give you a bit more detail, but to assure you, I certainly want this process to be robust, and one of the sort of criteria for me to get on board with this process was that we need to be absolutely confident that we do retain a level of sort of control over the land. We're not selling it and letting anyone do what they want with it. We are retaining an element of control over what is built out on that particular piece of land, because it needs to fall in line with what we want to do with the town, with that piece of the town as a council. And you'll see we've got Kath here, who I know you know from the our other investment partnerships. So it might be worthwhile me handing over to Anne or possibly Kath. Thanks.
Thank you. Sorry, having some technical issues. Thank you. Absolutely right, Councillor Stobart, to raise this. Absolutely right to raise this issue. Thank you for doing so. It's something, as Councillor Batchelor said, we've thought long and hard about in approaching this. You'll see from the pack that there is mention where we talk about the local centre in the covering report, that we are taking and have been taking legal advice as part of this process, and we are using external legal advisors to make sure that we have people with the right expertise advising us on this process. You'll also see a list of bullet points where we've thought very carefully about what this process would look like and how much influence we can have over it in the sense of a conditional sale. You'll also be aware that our planning colleagues have taken a great interest in Northstowe over the years and are very keen to ensure that the quality and the design of the build that happens on phase 1 and subsequent phases is all in place. We have tried to reflect that within the process as well. Obviously, any development that came forward would be subject to approval through the planning process, and we would be keen to continue to work alongside a developer in ensuring that they can present to our planning colleagues what they would be wanting to see for the town.
Councillor Stobart.
I'm grateful for the reply. I wonder if, through you, Chair, the planning process might, even though this is, I suppose, relatively small as a development, might include a planning performance agreement, and that kind of proper process of iteration and investigation that would result in a good conclusion. Yeah.
Thank you. I'm just getting nods there, so I think that's, lovely. Councillor Stobart, did you have any other points? Yeah.
No, Chair, that's fine. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I've got Councillor Tom Bygott next.
Thank you, Chairman. So I'm going off the electronic PDF version, which doesn't have the pink on the pages. So my question is on page 98. Is that a white page or a pink page? I'm safe.
Safe. You're safe.
That's a white page. Fantastic. So, on paragraph 28, Market interest also indicated there was no commercial imperative for a single project to develop the LC and EZ. So with our experience in building Camborne, we had actually designed a very large and impressive business park for Camborne, which we're currently sitting in now. But the majority of those buildings were never built, and we then needed to sell the land just over there for housing instead of for the original. I think there's going to be laboratories here as well as offices. And there was also the original plan for Camborne High Street was that it would be much, much more extensive than it currently is. And in fact, all of the land between the Camborne Hub and the Monkfield Arms was originally supposed to be a fully developed high street. And so obviously in Northstowe, one of the issues we have is that it's almost 100% housing. It's a very good principle in development to have a mixture between housing, commercial office space and retail space, and getting that balance right is absolutely essential for a good new community. And so my question is really what the risks are that if we do separate the local centre from the employment zone, that if that helps us to develop the local centre faster, what's the risk that the enterprise zone is going to be delayed, and how can we make sure that Northstowe is a fully rounded community with a proper mixture of housing, commercial and retail space? Thank you.
Thank you for that, Councillor Bygott. Councillor Henry Batcher.
I'm going to pass to Anne if that's okay, Chair.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. Yes, and you're absolutely right about that mix across a town and learning some of the lessons from Camborne previously. So hopefully just to provide you with some reassurance on this, work continues with regards to the enterprise zone. And as I've outlined in the report, what we've been doing is having conversations about both the local centre and the enterprise zone. And we're all very aware that there is a real desire to develop the local centre as quickly as possible across Northstowe. And we also recognise that the local centre has a different function to the enterprise zone. And whilst the two, we intend to be very complementary and support each other and reinforce each other as desirable employment locations, we do recognise that we want to bring that local centre forward, and obviously that's what the people of Northstowe have been telling us. So the approach that we are recommending here would enable us to bring forward the local centre as soon as possible, whilst continuing work on the enterprise zone. And if committee were minded at some point later to go into private session, we could talk a little bit more about the enterprise zone conversations. But essentially, we have spoken with those who would be potentially interested in looking at both parcels of land moving forward, but also those who have expertise in bringing forward those individual, more retail elements, and then something more akin to an enterprise zone. So those conversations continue. We want to keep those options moving forward, but the work on the enterprise zone is continuing as well.
Thank you for that. Councillor Bygott.
Great. Thank you very much. I really appreciate that update. I think, as an authority, we need to talk to central government quite often about the various developments that we're doing. But I think one of the issues that the whole country faces economically is that we have a system of business rates which taxes very heavily businesses that have offices or physical shops, but doesn't tax much at all businesses that operate without office space and without retail space. And so we have quite a profusion of people coming to deliver things door to door and people working from home. And it just seems to me that we have a whole tax system that is actually encouraging the sort of withering away of things like offices and shops, which are an essential part of town planning. And just to make sure that those in government who are making those taxation decisions understand that there are implications for how well new towns can actually be built if, because of the way the tax system is structured, we don't get a proper mixture when we're building new things. Thank you.
Thank you for that. Yeah, I think there's nodding that's been noted. Yeah. Did you want to comment any further on that?
I don't think so, other than just to reiterate the fact we do have a very good relationship with Homes England, who are obviously the government's house builder, who are building a lot of the units in Northstowe themselves. And the various ministers over the years have, paid a, very special attention to Northstowe as a new town. So I'd say sort of Northstowe's links with central government are relatively strong. And yeah, absolutely. I think we and yourselves and our MPs can obviously make the point about business rates to them through the various channels. So yeah, I think Northstowe, in terms of central government interest, is very high up the agenda.
Lovely. Councillor Richard Williams, please.
Thank you, Chair. This question might need to be partly answered in confidential sessions, but I think it's not just a question of what, it's a question of when. So I was wondering if there's anything you can say in this part of the meeting about the guarantees we will have about when the local centre will be delivered, not so much just what's in it. And what guarantees are there that we can ensure that it is delivered in a timely way, i.e. quickly?
Councillor Henry Batchelor.
So I'd be hesitant to put a time on it, although the reason we are favouring this particular approach is because of the expediency factor. So this, in our view, would be the quickest way to deliver something of high quality on the local centre site. As I say, I'd be hesitant with all planning/construction projects to put a date on something, because yeah, that would be pretty foolish of me at this stage. But I would say that would be the one of the main factors for wanting to go down this route, would be the fact that it would be the most expedient way to deliver something that the town needs now and will need in the future in the quickest possible way. So I appreciate a bit of a woolly answer, but yeah, that's probably all I can say at this stage on that.
Thank you for that. Councillor Richard Williams.
Yeah, I might come back to it in closed session because there is reference in some papers to contractual guarantees, and I'd like to know what they are, but maybe that's for
Lovely.
closed
Thank
session.
you. Thank you for that. Councillor Lisa Redrup, please.
Thank you, Chair. My question's around the kind of the process that we're suggesting through conditional sale and the clauses that we have. So that it seems like the main control is that there's this clawback clause, so that if the milestones aren't met, then land can be returned to SCDC. And I just wondered, how confident are we that can be an effective control of making sure that we get something good for Northstowe? I guess my concern is that we're all about expediency, and if this clawback clause could take a long time to implement, then it further delays achieving the local centre for Northstowe. So I guess I worry that could be exploited by a developer, that we might not want to invoke that if something goes wrong, just because it might increase the length of time. Thanks.
I suppose following on from Councillor Stobart's question is, I think the point being, I think we're hoping that the process up to the point of us selling the freehold would be that the process of deciding which partner we essentially sell the land to, that process would be robust enough to know that we're confident enough we wouldn't have to use the clawback element. But ultimately, that's why we build these things in, as a security net for us. But in terms of confidence, I'd hope that the process up to that point would have been robust enough that we don't need it. And certainly on other investments, we haven't had to use it. So yeah, I'm trying not to say anything that I shouldn't do at this point. But yeah, I'd say that's I'd say we're going to go through a very robust process to decide who we're going to sell this land to if we do go down this route. So yeah, I think that's probably all I want to say there. I don't know if officers want to add anything on top of that, but
thank you for that. I think that's clear. So yeah, thank you. Lisa, did you have anything else? No. Okay. Did we have any other speakers on this item? The only thing I was going to add is I can't remember which page it was on, when we talk about the employment zone and the local centre sort of being separated essentially. I just wanted to check that because they're not running in tandem, that one or the other didn't sort of take a lot less sort of priority or sort of slip off the agenda is what I was thinking. I think in the report it doesn't allude to that, but I just wanted to check that is the case.
No, and I think if we do go down this route and follow this process we're proposing here, then the local centre will be the first thing. That will be the sort of priority. Because I think you'll see in the recommendations we're recommending to Cabinet ultimately that we go down this path for the local centre, but then keep exploring our options for the enterprise zone. So yeah, I would say, and I think geographically as well, they are separated by a road. So there's in terms of the physical build out, I don't think there'll be much overlap there. So no, I don't think in terms of priority, I think the local centre will be coming first, and then the enterprise zone to follow. But yeah, so I don't know if that answers your question at all.
It does.
Certainly,
yeah,
that's
thank you for that.
The process.
So, Councillor Stobart.
Chair, a question to you. Are we going to go into closed session with this?
We will do, but we'll take both this item and the next one together in a closed session at the end.
Could I just put a place marker in for a discussion? The document is thorough, but it doesn't actually explicitly mention an external review. So I mentioned red team review, and I think that's essential that we do that. So if I put a place marker down, I don't think there's anything confidential about that, but if we're going to come to a recommendation.
No, I think you're right, and we'll make that as a recommendation.
Yeah, absolutely, and we can discuss that in private session if you'd like to.
Yeah. Thank you for that, Councillor Stobart. So if we've got no other comments on this item, we'll move to the recommendation, which was on page 96, I believe. Yes, 96. Sorry, yeah.
Just thinking about what Councillor Stobart has said, there is no recommendation in the confidential item. So I'm just thinking, if it was deemed that it was a good idea to have an external review, we need to amend the recommendations in this public session.
Yeah, so I think the recommendation has been noted that we do that. I'm getting nods, so I think the committee is happy that we do that, make that recommendation. Yeah, we'll see.
As an C, that there should be some form of external review.
I
don't know. I mean, I'm just saying that would be it's just that we need to have a hook for it so that people can actually do it.
Yeah, I mean, I think I'd be happy with that. I think it's been, Anne, sorry.
Thank you, Chair. Could I make a suggestion? Given that this is still a work in progress at the moment, as members are aware, we could add that into the body of the report to go to Cabinet.
Yeah,
so
I think that's reasonable.
It doesn't need to be a separate recommendation, but it could outline the process in a bit more detail for Cabinet.
Yeah, I think it's clear what we're getting at from the steer from the committee, and Natalie's noted that. So,
don't we? Sorry. Yes. What I was suggesting was that in order to fulfil what Councillor Stobart has suggested, which I think is actually a good idea.
So do I.
In order to engage to get this into the document that then goes to Cabinet, we need to agree as a committee that one of our recommendations will be that there shall be external review.
Yeah,
now, I hear what Anne Ainsworth says, but this is an additional thing that hasn't been mentioned in the report so far.
Yeah.
So I think it's not unreasonable to say that, and if Councillor Stobart, I just think it's worth formalising it in the format of an amendment to the recommendations that we agree on.
Yeah, is the committee happy with that? That's a formal recommendation to on page 96 that we recommend Councillor Stobart's point? Yeah, yes. Agreed? Yeah, lovely. Thank you for that.
Thank you, Chair.
So we will move on. So we'll come on to the next agenda item, which is agenda item 8, South Cambs Limited Trading and Ermine Street Housing Review of Business Plan, and this is pages 105 to 112. And the same things apply, as I said, for the last item, that we will have some of this in closed session because of commercial aspects. But do councillors want to ask any questions on this in open session?
Yes.
Councillor Drew.
Thank you. I think it's clear that the work of Ermine Street in terms of providing housing and in terms of providing income to the council remains excellent. It remains a really positive impact on the council for another year. So moving on from where we asked questions in 2025, and here we are again in 2026. So it remains absolutely clear for me. I'm sure colleagues will pick things out and ask stuff, but I would just generally like to make that point at the start. However, I would like to ask a question very similar to one of the questions that I asked last year, which relates to Ermine Street and local government reform. We are now a year closer to local government reform, and Ermine Street, as a wholly owned company related to South Cambridgeshire District Council, will obviously change, as it will move to being an organisation controlled and owned by South Cambridgeshire to being one which goes into unity authority. So therefore, what I'd like to ask, and if it is felt that this is somehow commercially sensitive and needs to be answered under the pink papers closed session later on, then so be it. What work has been done and what is the view of Ermine Street in relation to local government reform and the fact that there will be a change to the council oversight of Ermine Street, and that the assumption that the views of South Cambridgeshire District Council in relation to Ermine Street, it cannot be assumed that it will be the same once the assets and authority in relation to Ermine Street moves to a new unity authority. So I would assume that since we've now moved on by another 12 months and are closer again to local government reform, I would like an explanation of what work and what view has been formed in this regard.
Councillor Williams, did you want to go on that?
Well, Ermine Street Housing is although it's a wholly owned company of South Cambs, trades separately to South Cambs, has its own board of directors, and really that question needs to be put to Ermine Street Housing, not to this council.
So do we have somebody from Ermine Street's board in the meeting who is able to answer the question? I'm really sorry, and this ended up almost in a huge argument last year, and it was quite unpleasant. I'm sorry, I'm shocked. I am truly shocked. Ermine Street has received tens of millions of pounds from South Cambridgeshire District Council. I would expect in public session in March 2026, when we are, a year away realistically from unitary council elections taking place, and realistically 2 years away from the unitary authority being set up, which will take ownership and responsibility for Ermine Street, that nobody is present who is in a position to answer a very simple question. What has been done by Ermine Street to prepare for local government reform? But there is no answer apparently, so.
Councillor Williams, did you want?
Well, no, actually, I think, you ought to invite Ermine Street here to answer that question. It's not our place to talk on behalf of Ermine Street. We're here to review their business plan, to recommend, make recommendations on that business plan to Cabinet, and it will be for Cabinet to review and approve this report. But as I said, we do not control Ermine Street. It is a separate company. It's owned by, we are the single shareholder, but management of that company is the responsibility of the board of Ermine Street.
Peter Campbell actually is a director of Ermine Street, and I think he's perfectly happy to make a comment.
Great, thank you.
I'm more than happy to answer that. So, Ermine Street's view on LGR is that there needs to be a discussion between the councillors and Ermine Street once we know what LGR will look like for the councils. We do not know that at the moment. What we do know, members will recall, about 2, maybe 3 years ago, we had an external review of Ermine Street carried out by Savills. And we looked at a number of options there to continue to operate, which was the option which members chose. And one of the options there was to close Ermine Street down, to liquidate the stock. And what was very apparent at that time is that if we were to liquidate Ermine Street and just get the money back, it was likely that in that sort of fire sale that you would not get back the full value of the housing stock, and that would represent a loss to the council. And what you've got to bear in mind is that when you buy a property, particular property for rent, when you first start off, not only do you have the purchase price of the property, you have the stamp duty, the legal cost, you have the refurbishment costs, etc. So in nearly all cases, if you look at the profitability of each property as it is, and there are of course exceptions to this, that you go overdrawn to begin with, you are in the red for several years. And when you get further into it, when the mortgage, if you like, becomes less, that's when you move into profit. And at that time, the decision was to liquidate the stock would lose money, and it made sense to continue as a business. And that is still the case now. We're not far enough down that line to really have changed that picture. So the view of Ermine Street is that once we know what local government reorganisation is going to look like, Ermine Street and the future council will have a conversation. It is up to remember that although the Ermine Street can influence this, the council is the sole shareholder. So Ermine Street cannot make that decision alone.
Back into the same circular discussion that we had last year at this point. If I can just come back on that again. One of the points that is made very clearly, Councillor Williams makes it very strongly, I accept completely what he says, about Ermine Street being a standalone company in which the South Cambs is the sole shareholder. And one of the benefits of having an organisation such as Ermine Street, that councils across England have used, is the use of a more commercial approach. If I was the shareholder of a commercial company, and the landscape in which my commercial company in which I was a shareholder was going to operate was likely to change dramatically in the space of 2 years due to law changes, due to regulatory changes, due to economic changes, I would expect the directors of the company that I was a shareholder of to have discussed in detail and in depth how they were planning to respond to all of the feasible possible decisions that government or regulators, my apologies, regulators would make. So, for instance, if I was a shareholder in a water company and there was a possibility that the Ofwat was going to change the rules, I would expect the directors of the company I was a shareholder in to have plans for that. It may be that they plan for 10 scenarios and 9 of them don't happen, but I would expect the directors of the company I was a shareholder in to do their due diligence and go forward. So therefore, what I'm driving at here I'm afraid that the answer that's been given so far doesn't convince me that is happening, is are the directors of Ermine Street engaged in a process of appropriate due diligence regarding the fact that the framework and environment in which they are going to work is going to potentially significantly change. You may have a unitary authority where even if the unitary authority is the Greater Cambridge model and it's about half South Cambs, half Cambridge, you have a situation where you have people elected in the city of Cambridge who then form half of the council. If a larger unitary authority comes along, let's say the model that includes South Cambs, Cambridge City and East Cambs, then South Cambs becomes a minority within that unitary authority. And therefore Ermine Street's current ownership and control becomes the minority. And I would expect the directors of Ermine Street to be considering what possible approach could a new unitary authority that South Cambridge District Council has no longer control be taking. So what I'm really looking for is some assurance that that appropriate due diligence and responsibility taking is being engaged in by the directors of Ermine Street.
Thank you for that. Did Councillor John Williams, did you want to come in first on that? Or?
Well, I think Councillor Drew has made my point for me, that this is not the time to be
I totally disagree with you, Councillor Williams.
Ermine Street, I'm sure, as the head of housing has said, obviously has this in mind, but this is not the place to be discussing this, and you know, it's not for us to second guess what Ermine Street will come to us with going forward. So this isn't really the time to be doing this.
What, Peter, did you want to come in on as a board member?
The view, as I explained, the view taken by the directors is that this is going to be part of a future discussion with the director, with Ermine Street and with the shareholders. I understand that Councillor Drew has got a different view, but that is not one that the directors agreed with.
Okay. So just to be absolutely clear, because obviously we are in public session, I want it to be absolutely clear that both in 2025 and in 2026, I have raised a profound concern about the fact that, in my view, I am not receiving information that shows me that I should have confidence that the directors of Ermine Street are responding correctly in the way that they should as directors of a commercial organisation to the potential groundswell change of the context in which they exist. In a sense, all I want to hear is we are holding these discussions and we recognise that there is potentially a huge change to take place, and we are considering what those possible changes could be. And at the moment, I'm not sure I'm hearing that. But I accept, exactly as Peter Campbell says and as Councillor John Williams has said, that I do hold a view on this and it disagrees with the view that I'm hearing, and I accept completely, absolutely, that is the right of people not to agree. I will leave it at that. Thank you, Councillor Kane.
Yeah, can I just make a comment on that?
Yes.
I am confident that they are doing what you suggest they're doing. The risk register shows quite clearly that the major risk that the board is considering is the one you outlined entirely.
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay, so we'll come on to Councillor Anna Bradnam.
Thank you, Chair. And indeed, my question is related to that which Councillor Drew has asked. So, if I can just address the issue that Councillor Drew has asked, what I note is that, as John Batchelor has pointed, Councillor Batchelor has pointed out, on paragraph 32, page 109 of the agenda, it says that Ermine Street Housing maintains its own risk register, which is monitored by the Board of Directors. And it then goes on to describe the makeup of the Board of Directors. So it sort of begs the question, we could perhaps have asked them to attend this committee if we thought to do that. And perhaps they might have felt able to answer some questions. But my particular question was a rather more gritty financial one, which is, when are we expecting to get the loan back? And is the rental market robust enough to recover the loan? Over what time period? And again, that was what drew me to the risk element of this report in section 30, where it says the key risk SR25 is that the investment in Ermine Street housing fails to deliver a return. And we're informed that there are 3 controls in mitigation. So it seems a shame we didn't invite them here, because they might have been able to answer the question. I appreciate Peter's here, but that's my question. Is there any risk in these turbulent times? And indeed, one of the other things is, we're aware that in this current market where house prices are relatively high, people are finding it difficult to afford mortgages, actually rental is under pressure, because actually people are going into rental because they can't afford to buy, which means that actually there are fewer rental properties. So Ermine Street housing should be in a strong position there to be able to offer rentals, providing we have enough properties. But I just wondered how the view is of the likelihood of Ermine Street housing making its being able to repay the loan in due course. And I appreciate that's likely, you know, the intention was over a long time frame. I will just finally add that on page 131 of our agenda, which is skipping into a not confidential bit, but it's our work programme. The work programme for today looks at SR25, Ermine Street housing, council investment fails to deliver a return. So that's the question I'm asking, really. Are we sure it's going to deliver a return?
I'll come to Councillor John Williams in the first instance. I think Peter Campbell has sort of alluded a bit to this in terms of the long-term investment and depending on when we potentially cash in the investment, essentially. But did you want to add anything?
I think my view on this, Councillor, is that we run the risk of running into issues that are confidential. So if members agree, can we come back to it in the closed session?
More than happy.
I'm very happy to raise it under the confidential section. Thank you.
Lovely. Okay. Okay, so we'll move on. Councillor Richard Stobart.
Chair, thank you. So it was really just some clarification. Paragraphs 17 and 18 on page 107 concerns what's happening, you know, the period just coming up. No major acquisitions planned, but if there are some disposals, then Ermine Street Housing will talk to the council about how best to, in a sense, manage the money. So there's all sorts of dimensions to that, but I'll just say those 2 paragraphs aren't clear. You have to dig into them in order to find that out. So if I might move on to page 109, and this is staying generic, paragraphs 33 and 34. I just wanted to reflect briefly on the kind of risk when you go and buy a house, as Ermine Street are doing, and buying a house off the second-hand market. What are the, if you will, the factors that come into play? It's always a risk, and householders find this, that you might have to do more or less. So could I ask, you know, what's the performance of that process? And is there some variance in it? Some are good, some are bad. How is that assessed and understood, particularly with regard to what might be done to improve energy and water performance?
Peter Campbell, did you want to come in first on that, indicating to speak?
Yes. So when we buy a property, most street properties are relatively new properties. So they quite often come with warranty, etc. They'll come with relatively new boilers that aren't ready for replacement. So the majority of properties need like a light touch refurbishment at that time. If members recall, last year I think it was, following the council's housing needs stock condition survey, Ermey Street had something similar, which, although it was lighter touch given the nature of the housing stock, looked at likely investment needs over the coming period, and the projections were quite comfortable that Ermey Street could afford to pay for work was needed in coming years.
Councillor Stover.
Just to follow up then, in the same kind of sense, but slightly different question, the house performance is just useful in itself, perhaps water performance, energy performance. Is Ermey Street Housing in a position to gather any of that data, that might be used as a pool of data to help us with, planning, the development of the local plan, that kind of thing, where we need, in a sense, housing performance as data points?
Peter Campbell, did you?
I'm not quite sure what you mean by that question, Councillor, but I would remind you that Ermey Street housing stock is not restricted to stock that's within this council. So we actually have very few properties here. There's a spread across the region, and indeed as far away as Nottingham. If we could pick I'm not quite sure what you think about it. We'll have that conversation outside this meeting. Is there anything we can do to contribute? I'm sure we can do, but bear in mind that limitation.
Councillor Stover.
So just as a footnote, Peter's offered to have a discussion another time, but things like if you were to install low flush toilets, you go to 10 litres to 4 litres in a refurbishment, it's just assessing the performance of that. Does that technology stack up? Does it work? So it's that kind of thing that Ermey Street Housing in the process of its normal business might be able to assess. Yeah.
Can I come back on that? Yeah. Because I'm kind of going to answer your question in a roundabout sort of way here. If you remember, Councillor, is that the council are involved in gain funding for a water reduction programme. We've got some money from the anyway, we've got lots of money, and that is about water reduction. We will be carrying out steps at council-owned properties, and we'll be monitoring water use as part of that programme. So that should produce quite a rich data set to see what's effective and what's not.
Councillor Stover.
No, thank you. Fruitful discussion, perhaps a little off track, but it's helpful.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Richard Williams.
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to come back to Councillor Drew's point. Obviously, the council is the sole shareholder, and it's in that capacity we're talking about Ermey Street today. But I just wanted to ask if the council has taken any advice or considered any options about the structure of Ermey Street in light of local government reform, or is it simply the position of the council that ownership of the company will transfer to the new unitary authority without any change at all in its structure or operation?
Councillor John Williams, did you want to comment on legal advice?
I'm not going to comment on that in public session.
Okay. Anyone else want to comment on it? No? Okay, we'll come back to it in
private session.
In private session, yeah. Okay, do we have any other speakers on this? If we haven't, we'll come to the recommendation. I think we have on page 113 noted the report. We'll have a 5-minute break at this point and then we'll move on to the next agenda item. Thank you.
Sorry, Chair.
Sorry,
We
yeah.
had recommendations on page 105.
Sorry, my mistake. Were we happy that we've scrutinised the report as we've been asked to do?
We're considering reviewing and approving the business plan. That the company's on target, changes in the financial assumptions and the financial return.
Yeah. So I think we've noted and commented on the report, but most of that will come in the closed session, I think. Yeah, thank you, Councillor Bradman. We'll have a Thank you. Okay, so we will move on to the next agenda item, which is agenda item 9, pages 113 to 124. And yeah, who would like to start on this item?
I know Councillor Leeming was wishing to ask a question about this. I'm sure she'll come back shortly.
Yeah, no, as soon as she comes back, she's more than welcome to speak. Thank you, Councillor Bradnam. Did anybody else want to speak on this agenda? Yes, Councillor Williams.
Yeah, thank you, Chair, if you allow me to speak as
Yes.
an ordinary member.
Yes.
Not a member of this committee. I have some experience of evening meetings when I was a London Borough Councillor. And they were played, I have to say, to ensure that certain people fell asleep or the item got ran off the end of the agenda.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, I've not had a good experience. I can understand why people see that it would allow those who have worked during the day to attend evening meetings. But what we tended to find that actually that restricted particularly women to be able to attend committee meetings, because if they had children, they had to be at home, or if they didn't have children, they were not happy about the meeting finishing at 11 a.m. at night and them having to walk home in the dark or get a public or use public transport. So it's, in theory, it sounds a really good idea, but in practice, actually, it causes some issues that I don't think you've foreseen in this paper.
Thank you for that, Councillor Williams. Councillor Richard Stobart.
Chair, thank you. I think what's wrapped up in this, I mean, it has two sides to it, and Councillor Williams was just talking about one, which is really trying to get a schedule that fits everybody's needs. It just looks particularly taxing. But I think it has to be worth a try, because you know, whichever kind of pattern we go for excludes certain people. And we haven't asked the question, are there ways of being really inclusive? So certain meetings at certain times, certain ways of doing things which don't, you know, require people to go home late at night and so on. So a deeper analysis would be better. I mean, what we've got here is a series of observations and anecdotes, and not really the firm basis for an analysis and an attempt to find a solution. So my suggestion would be that rather than waiting until the summer and doing a member survey, is to get a task and finish group to work on this. And to really go into it deeply and look at the social aspects, the way that the council works, other people's experience, but just try very hard and go deeper into what the issues are and what a solution might look like.
Thank you for that, Councillor Stobart, and the recommendation for a future scrutiny committee to take that up as a task and finish group there. Did any of the cabinet members want to comment on that at all? No? No? Yeah?
Yes.
Yes? Yeah.
Only to make the point again that, you know, whatever arrangement you have, someone's disadvantaged.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, and particularly in a rural setting, evenings are quite problematic, given the distances and so on that you have to go. And you know, I've got 7 parish councils, and you know, that takes up quite a bit of time. Thank you.
Thank you for that. Councillor Stobart, did you want to come back on that at all?
Yeah, again, the comment is, yeah, we have parish councils, but not everyone's got parish councils, and do we have to sit in parish council meetings in order to have effective liaison with our parish councillors? So I think there is we should explore the space. There's flexibility there. There are different solutions possible, perhaps there are certain things that we haven't looked at before that are apart from changing the times of committees. I mean, there's a whole big space to explore. So why don't we do that?
Thank you for that. Oh, sorry, Anne Ainsworth.
Thank you very much, Chair. Just on the point around a task and finish group, I was thinking that it might be helpful for committee to think about a recommendation around developing terms of reference for that, so that it's very much the voice of this committee that is then heard in any future work that could take place. So perhaps if we could work with Natalie to develop suitable recommendations around working with officers to develop terms of reference and then bringing those to a future committee.
Yeah, I'm sure members of the committee would be happy to do that. I think, I was going to go next, So, my comments were similar to Councillor Stobart's, actually. I think that a review would be good. My personal view is that there are authorities doing all different things. So authorities having council meetings in the evening, or all of their meetings during the day. Obviously here, this is really the only meeting that we have in the evening, and I think there probably could be a better balance. I think if you've got a full-time job, and I know there will be advantages and disadvantages for mums and people that are working or people doing night shifts, but I think that balance probably could be better here, and that might encourage people across the political spectrum to stand to be a councillor if they thought that that workload was sort of more achievable or more balanced throughout the day. So moving some of the meetings into the evening, would be, I think, beneficial and make it more open to people applying to become a councillor is my view on that. But I don't expect you to comment on that, given it's very similar to Councillor Stobart's comments. Councillor Richard Williams.
Thank you, Chair. Actually, a very similar point. But just to say, I think I support the suggestion about a task and finish group. I think that's very good. I think we do need to go into this in more detail. Yeah, I would just reflect your comments, really. I think maybe there could be a better balance. We need to be careful that, being a councillor doesn't just become a preserve of the retired or the self-employed. And I think it is very difficult for people who have jobs, for example, teaching in, secondary primary schools where you need to be there for a certain amount of time, and there are many jobs where there is not so much flexibility, but we could really benefit from bringing people in. So just to reflect those comments, just one small thing. I just think we ought not to fall into the trap too of just assuming that mothers are doing all the childcare. I think we should also make the point that fathers often do, and certainly should, be taking an equal amount of childcare. So, male members of this council are also heavily involved in looking after the children, and sometimes listen to briefings while they're cooking the kids' food. So I think we should just be mindful that we don't slip into a trap there.
Okay, so Councillor Helen Lehman. Sorry to confuse you there.
Thank you, Chair. I just wondered whether we could have another appendix. So there's Appendix A, which is a list of all the briefings and training sessions which take place in the evening. But for parity, it would be helpful to see all the meetings and training events and community events that take place in the day. Most of the sort of forums that are listed on here are open to the public, which is great. And they are in the evenings because that's convenient for working people to attend these community forums. There's a number of training courses and training for members, which is absolutely welcome that it's in the evenings. So some of the training that is in the evening, though, is quite specific to committees which really only function in the day. So, for example, on page 119, it talks about sort of the MPFF planning policy update. It is relevant to all members, but it's specifically relevant to people who are on the planning committee, which is never, ever in the evenings, and probably wouldn't be practical to be so. But I think my point is just that the fact that there is a training course for something doesn't mean that councillors would be able to attend the substantive thing that they were being trained for. I think just when this goes to cabinet, I think it would be helpful to see a comparative list of the very many meetings that take place during the day before 5 p.m.
I think that's a reasonable recommendation to make, and we'll note that. Yeah. Okay. Did anyone want to comment on that at all? They're happy for that to go forward? Yeah, I'm getting nods, so yeah. Councillor Anna Bradnam.
Thank you, Chair. My recollection, having been a district councillor since 2014, is that this subject has come under consideration before. And obviously there are some committees that, broadly speaking, have to be during the day, for example, licensing and planning. But members have previously said, you know, are we excluding people with families? And are we, as Councillor Williams has said, are we favouring people who are retired or, you know, are not working? The point is that we've gone round this merry-go-round before, and we've sort of settled on the pattern that we have at the moment, which leaves evenings free for this very extensive list of things going on, which are also related to committee work and related to what we do as councillors and members. And what I observe is that the argument that can be used about being excluding certain demographics as members can also be applied to our colleagues, our officers in the council. You know, they too have children and might be a father looking after a child. So, you know, and that means it's easier for that to be done during the day, because then in the evening they're home with family. So I just think it's, I'm not, you know, yes, fine, but I just hope that we don't spend an awful lot of time reinventing the wheel, and even if it means just a few adjustments, that's probably worthwhile. But I just, you know, I think there's an excellent exposition in this report of the, you know, the paragraphs 4 to 7 talking about what happens with evening meetings, and 8 to 12 talking about what happens if you have meetings during the day. But the other unexpected consequence can be this 11. For those in employment, evening committees can mean working days that extend from early in the morning until 9 or 10 o'clock at night. Witness, you know, our officers. This impact extends to family life. Councillors attending evening meetings sacrifice time with partners and children, and so do our colleagues, our officers. So I just think we need to have a cohort within that task and finish group who's actually thinking about the officers too. Thank you.
Thank you for that, Councillor Bradnam. Councillor Stephen Drew.
Fundamentally, I think what the purpose is here is asking for some kind of balance. I think fundamentally that's what's looking at here. I don't think that there is a proposal to move all of the meetings to the evening. I don't think that is what is being asked for. I think what's being asked for is some kind of balance. We should surely, in the way that we organise meetings, consider the needs of all groups. And at the moment, South Cambridge District Council chooses to prioritise daytime meetings and not to hold evening meetings for what are no doubt entirely valid reasons. Valid reasons mentioned by Councillor Williams, Councillor Batchelor, and then Councillor Bradman there. Entirely valid reasons. However, it is a choice. And at the moment, South Cambridge District Council makes a choice of how to organise its meetings and prioritise them in a certain way. And it puts Scrutiny and Overview into the evening, and it chooses to put everything else into the day. East Cambridge District Council's full council meetings start at 6 p.m. Huntingdon District Council start at 7 p.m. Cambridge City Council start at 6 p.m. Fenland starts at 4 p.m. Uttlesford starts at 7 p.m. West Suffolk starts at 7 p.m. They are our neighbours. They are our nearby people. I have no doubt whatsoever that each of those councils has consideration for where they are and makes a decision of where their meetings should be. The task and finish group proposed by Councillor Stobart is an excellent idea in this regard. I would like to make the point, though, that in terms of a survey, I actually think that a member survey, I actually don't think is a suitable end point of a survey, because it is by definition self-selecting, because those who have become members are those who have chosen to be able to work with the arrangements that are already there, or are those who believe they can work with the arrangements that are already there. Regardless of whether it is the Conservative group or the Liberal Democrat group, at this point leading up to the elections in May, we are all out there trying to find candidates to stand. I absolutely guarantee that the Conservative group have a number of people who they would very much like to have stood as candidates who have not stood as candidates because they cannot do daytime meetings. In the same way as I know that the Liberal Democrats have been unable to recruit some people as candidates because they cannot do daytime meetings. I should, in the interest of transparency, point out that I am stepping down as a councillor because South Cambridgeshire District Council has its meetings during the day. It is impossible for me to carry on being a district councillor and to do the job that I do. So I have to be very clear and say there is a personal element to this for me. I don't expect everything to change because it doesn't suit me. I just think there is no reason why, if we have 6 full council meetings each year, that we cannot have 3 starting at 2 p.m. and 3 starting at 6 p.m. I don't see why Civic Affairs cannot do the same thing. I don't see why the Climate Change Committee can't do the same thing. I would suggest that at the moment, by having all those meetings during the day, we are missing out as a council on potential input and potential things. And I would also suggest that while the points regarding officers are absolutely well made, and we should have concern, there is no way of saying this without sounding uncaring and potentially being unpopular. We are all employed, assuming we are employed to do a job. And sometimes aspects of the job that we have to do challenge us. And sometimes they create things that are difficult to do. I accept completely that officers doing meetings in the evenings is more difficult than doing meetings during the day. However, if the needs of council meeting arrangement and the needs of democracy are such that meetings are held in the evening, I believe it is the responsibility of officers to be able to attend those meetings. That doesn't show anything other than total respect for the work that officers do, but I think actually that is a point I would like to make, that officers have a responsibility, and if they need to attend evening meetings, as colleagues are doing this evening, then that is what they have to be asked to do. We are very clearly told again and again that working for South Cambridge District Council is a very beneficial and positive thing to do, and we are told about the number of people who apply for jobs here. I think I am of the view that changing the meeting pattern and requiring officers to do more evening meetings would not be an unreasonable request to make. I absolutely wholeheartedly support Councillor Stobart's suggestion of a task and finish group, and recognise the point that Councillor Bradman makes about making sure that membership of that group contains a wide range of representation. Thank you.
Thank you for that, Councillor Drew. Do we have any other speakers on this item? No. Okay. So, given we've heard the recommendation from Councillor Stobart, which we've noted, and I think the committee was in favour of that, with Councillor Bradnam's recommendation also about including all of those groups, I think we'll move on if everybody's... Yes?
Just one thing. It might be worth asking them to work with it. I know, as Anne Ainsworth has said, much of what the task and finish group would be agreed by them when they're set up.
Yes.
But I think we as a Scrutiny and Overview Committee would like to have a response back within quite a swift time frame. That's the purpose of a task and finish group. It works quite quickly, and it responds back in a matter of months. So, given that we've got elections coming up, that might be a bit tricky, but I would suggest...
I think that's a reasonable
we
point,
agree,
Councillor Bradnam.
you know, what
I
sort
think
of time
we
frame.
agree to start this after May, because it'll be the next scrutiny committee's job to take that on. But you're absolutely right to set some terms in, in terms of timescales. Would you be happy with that, Councillor Stobart?
Yes, I think the comment often applied to the task and finish groups is they tend not to finish.
Yeah.
So I think
so we will set some parameters around that with Natalie. Yeah.
Do we suggest that they might wish to consider responding back within a couple of months, 3 months?
To September, I would say. Would you?
No, not that long. From May, I would say May, June, July, but August. Sorry, did you say September?
September.
That's 4 months. Okay, well,
Sorry.
just a thought. To put a time frame on it.
Yeah. So, are you happy to end of August, September? Yeah. Sorry, Councillor Stobart.
Being that specific creates hostages to fortune. I think over the summer we're relying on people being available, and of course that's the peak holiday time.
I think what we'll do is we'll set the terms to say that we want it done in a suitable time frame, but it'll be up to the next committee to set that time frame. I don't know if we can do that on their behalf.
Can I suggest use of the word maybe swift or prompt or something like that, so it doesn't go on for ages.
Happy to put that in. Anne.
Chair, if it helps, we might have a form of words which could potentially become a recommendation for the committee. If you don't mind, if I read that out and then see whether that's satisfactory. The officers be asked in consultation with the Chair and Vice Chair of the Scrutiny and Overview Committee for the 26-27 municipal year to draft potential terms of reference for a task and finish group to consider the timing of future council committee meetings, and that the terms of reference in one above and the decision to set up a task and finish group be considered by a future meeting of this committee as determined in the committee's work plan.
Yeah, agreed. So I think that's reasonable. It doesn't set a time frame as such, but
the terms of the scrutiny and overview, the terms of the task and finish will come back to scrutiny and overview, but the next scrutiny and overview committee is not until
after the election.
Hang on, where are we?
Yeah, 4th of June, I think.
June. So can it? I mean, June. That sounds quite quick, but if we're only setting it up in May, but I just think the whole point of a task and finish group is that it's expeditious, it gets on with it quickly.
I don't think we could, I agree. We'll add a word in it, say that it's done within the year or promptly, I think would be reasonable. But I don't think we can, as Councillor Stobart said, sort of tie their hands because it's a future committee. So I think we'll go with that wording. Is everybody happy with that? Lovely. Agreed? Thank you. Lovely. Right, we will move on. So the next agenda item is the work programme, pages 125 to 146. Did anybody have anything they wanted to add or question? No? If not, we will move on. The date of the next meeting, June the 4th. Yeah. And then we'll move on to items 13 and 14, which will be in closed session. Is everybody happy that we go into closed session as we discussed?
Agreed.
Agreed? Okay. So the press and public are likely to be excluded from the meeting during consideration of the exempt appendices to the following items in accordance with the provisions of section 100A4 of the Local Government Act 1972. Exempt information as defined in paragraph 3 of the Schedule 12A. Paragraph 3 relates to information about the financial or business affairs of any particular person, including the authority holding that information. So if we now go into closed session.